Yeah, when Robert connected me with you, I got really excited and read about your
Yeah,
background. And
yeah,
it's crazy, you're involved in so many things. So where do you get all the time?
yeah. No, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course.
Your story with SBOA is just so incredible. How you scaled it from just an idea to this 7,000 member alliance. And I'm sure that must have been very difficult because I'm sure the whole pitch is the alliance itself, which didn't exist when you started. So
Yeah, no, it was kind of a crazy story actually. It came up. So 2008 was something that I hope you never experience, although it's pretty shitty out there right now. Um, but I mean, there was no banking system. I mean, everything was shut down. It was absolutely insane. And so their real estate was almost worthless and they couldn't get loans. And so I mean, every business was cratering, right? You had no idea what was going to happen. Like every people I knew had hundreds of millions of dollars lost everything. And ultimately, I kind of had this idea, okay, to make more money at my properties, why don't I go with other guys who are like-minded and let's buy shit together, right? Let's go to our vendors, get better deals. And it worked. And so I went to my partner. I was like, let's build a website. Let's invest 10 grand each and let's go to a conference and get a booth and pitch our idea and make this a money-making event. And then a venture and ultimately an insurance company, a credit card. I mean, made tens of millions of dollars
wow.
just from an idea.
It just started with you and a few friends and
One business partner, yeah.
yeah, a few business partners. I mean, with the small group of you guys, do you guys have enough power to like compete with some of these big companies early on? And
Yeah, yeah.
tell me more.
Yeah, our insurance business uh, is the largest in the industry. And it generates about $125 million a year premium.
Wow. For the audience who might not know much about like what you've done, what your background is, how about you just give a quick blurb about who you are, what you've accomplished, what you're most proud of?
Sure. So I went to Michigan, very entrepreneurial while I was there. Got involved in lots of different businesses like t-shirts and posters, and I was always uh, trying to find a way to build some kind of business. And then at the end of college, just didn't really have a great direction of what I wanted to do, and didn't necessarily have any type of mentor or anybody who could kind of teach me how to run a business. So I went to law school uh, and ended up practicing law for 5 years. Thankfully, did real estate law, which kind of translated well into business. But I hated being a lawyer. From the first day I hated it. It was a terrible job for me. I'm not a detail person. I'm not, sitting drafting documents in an office all day is like torture to me. And so ultimately, after a couple of years, I realized I can't do this for a career. I'm not good at it. I was great at bringing in business. I was good at dealing with people, really good at, you know, figuring out how to get things done and having people rely on me and being like the guy that people can go to. Uh, and ultimately, my wife gave me the best advice ever, which was to go out there and just, meet with somebody once a month in another industry, take them to lunch and kind of figure out, what I want to do next. And then ultimately, uh, clients of mine, we connected and about doing something more permanent, and they decided to bring me in. And so I went from working in a like a high-powered like law firm where literally everything was done for me all day long. Like somebody came every 15 minutes to my office, they walk around the hall. If I wanted to send something to somebody else, like they would take it to them. Like they want you at your desk billing hours, right? So they bring you food. They just want you there. So, uh, and wearing a suit and tie every day and great conditions. And then literally, that was a Friday. I left. On Monday, I showed up at working for my clients who were in the paving and trucking industry, but were also in doing real estate. So I went there to run their real estate. And I was literally went from working in the ivory tower to working in a trailer with my window view looking at the garbage dump, the city dump. I mean, no exaggeration. And I loved it. I loved it. I ended up getting my own office in Farmington Hills within a year with one
Beautiful.
of our partners. And then from there, as luck would have it, when I got there, we had just bought a piece of land together that they were putting a trucking facility at. And they said, hey, we got to figure out what to do with the rest of the land. We had 40 acres, and we said, we're paving all these storage properties. There's got to be something to it. Ian, why don't you go figure it out? And so I hired a consultant. I went to some trade shows. Next thing I knew, we built one and hired someone to manage it for us, but I was overseeing it. And then I loved the business, but built another one. Then we built another one. Then I took over management myself and was managing some other facilities. And I realized it was great business. But from there, we started looking at some bigger and better things. We started getting into some residential development in the Carolinas. We developed a couple of industrial properties, and things were going great. And then we sold the storage facilities, and it came time to kind of reevaluate our partnership and figure out, instead of me taking a salary and you know me doing some other things, we tried to figure out another way to go forward. And it wasn't working. They were not offering anything that I could possibly do. Um,
And how close,
and
what year
so
is this close to 2008 or?
this was 2006.
Okay.
And so I decided just to leave. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, none. Um, I was doing some consulting. I actually had gotten into using technology to help locate real estate deals, using this GIS technology. And that was actually going really well. We were making some fees and we had potential. What we did was we went to clients. We said, okay, if we can find you a site, the deal closes, we take a percentage fee. We had 7 deals under contract, like to put in like literally Targets and Home Depots and Kroger's, and they were all over the country, and huge potential fees in the millions of dollars. And then 2008 hit, and not one closed, and we made $0.
Wow.
So, but as luck would have it, I separated from my partners uh, in 2006. And then about 6, 7 months later, as luck would have it, I met a guy through a crazy set of circumstances. Like I was trying to figure out what to do next. And I offered to, had a broker's license, and someone came to me with a portfolio, and I offered to broker it for him. And turns out a guy from Boston came into town to see it. Um, the properties were all over town. We were in the car together for 4 or 5 hours looking at sites, and he's arguing with his old partners. I'm arguing with mine. We're having phone calls. We start talking. I'm like, what do you do? What do you do? I said, this may sound crazy, but you've got properties. I've got access to capital, and I know how to manage these things. We should talk about doing this together. And from the day I met him, fast forward 90 days, we bought 6 properties together. We had an equity source that we signed a deal with. And next thing I knew, we were off to the races. Like it was that fast. And then, so we did most of that in 2007, and then 2008 hit. And it was just like, again, like nothing you can imagine. And we were accumulating debt because we were managing the properties, and that was actually costing us out of pocket to manage them ourselves. And then what happened was, well, first thing that happened was we started the SBOA. And that ended up being obviously a great thing. That started generating really nice cash flow for us, which we were in desperate need of. I mean, I didn't pay, so I left in 2006, um, pulled out enough money from the sales to pay myself for about 5 years. And my wife had a very good job at Ford Motor Company in the legal department, and was making, very nice salary. And so I had that comfort there. And so, but I didn't pay myself other than a few fees that came in. I didn't take a salary for 4 years.
Wow.
And I really bet on myself. And so what happened was, 2008 came, and here's how crazy the world was. So bank comes to us and says, you got a problem. We loaned you $18 million. We just did an appraisal. Your buildings are only worth 11 million. And we said, well, first, I want to correct you on the pronoun. We have a problem. You have just as big a problem as us. And we don't really have a problem. Like we're cash flowing, we're distributing cash to our investors. Like just because you have bad valuation in today's market, which we completely appreciate, we're still doing well. And so we convinced them after a year of negotiating and several trips to Chicago to meet with the lender, we convinced them to extend our loan for 3 years. They doubled our interest rate. And then any cash flow we had to pay down the principal of the debt with. And so 3 years, so in that time, we're probably one of the only guys in real estate at that time um, that paid back every penny they ever borrowed, right? And we didn't renegotiate any loans and we didn't give back any properties to banks. And so ultimately what happened was the bank started calling us and said, all right, since you're one of the last guys standing, we'll sell you these deals, but you got to sign personally. I maybe had definitely had less than $1 million net worth. And so the banks kept coming to us and we signed personally on about $70 million worth of debt. We personally guaranteed it. But what we were able to do is we were able to buy properties at 20 cents in the dollar and 40, 50% occupied. And this was, between 2009 and end of 2009 to beginning of 2013, we bought 70 properties in 8 states, managed it all ourselves, built up a great team,
These are residential properties or storage properties or
self-storage, all of it.
self-storage? Okay.
And then ultimately, we started selling. And I mean, just to give you an idea, I mean, so there were a couple of the publicly traded companies that were in Michigan after '08 all sold everything they had here, and we gladly took them, right? At one point, we had close to 40 properties in Michigan, but we were literally buying properties from publicly traded, from REITs in 2010 and 11 for a price that we sold back to them in 2015 for 5 to 6 times what we paid for them. So, and in the interim, we were cash flowing so much that our investors had pulled out, and then we refinanced all the property. So our investors had all their money out and then some, and we were returning, you know, by 2000, 11, 12, I mean, we were returning 40% cash on cash returns to our investors, like unheard of. That probably never happen again. And so it was very fortunate. And then we kind of made a calculated decision, which, you could argue a lot of different ways. We could have held on longer and probably sold for more, but we decided to, take advantage and cash out. So we sold majority, almost all the properties in 2016. So in the meantime, we've been building up SBOA, building up this insurance company now that we've been running for almost 15 years. We built up a credit card processing business. We had a couple other, like a collection type business and a marketing business. And we were really at the kind of and at one point, I think we were the 24th largest operator of self-storage properties in the country. And I think we had 4.5 million square feet. Um, so we were really kind of at the center of the storage industry for a long time.
That's insane. I mean, there's probably so many moments in this whole timeline where you really have to make a difficult decision, almost a gamble, almost when you're so much in debt and have to take this risk. So were those decisions hard to make? Was it, the entrepreneurial blood in you that just wants to take that risk? Or because
It's
I
a
feel like a lot
great,
of people,
it's a great question. I would tell you, um, so there's a couple things. So number one, it's interesting. So um, when you don't have a lot to lose, it's a lot easier to take the risk, right? So let's say hypothetically we defaulted and they tried to come after, their personal guarantees, right? There's not a lot for them to get, right? I didn't have much in the way of assets, so we kind of figured, this is the kind of thing you hear stories about where people took big risks in difficult times, and that's where they made their money, right? And so we kind of made this very calculated decision that this is a smart thing to do. But I will tell you, I basically didn't have a sleepless night for 4 years, 5 years, right? Like it was a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. We had 165 employees in 8 states and had the insurance business and the credit card business and the SBOA business. And I'm on a plane once or twice a week, having young kids, a young family. And that was one of the big reasons I really ultimately decided to sell because I was 46 years old. Uh, I had kids that at the time were 12 and 10, and I figured what a gift that I can all of a sudden go from working 60, 70 hours a week to working 15 to 20, not have to travel like that. Uh, and really, if I was being honest with myself, I'd already kind of exceeded all the expectations I ever had for myself professionally and financially. And so I kind of made the decision like, don't be greedy and take what you got and really enjoy your life. And ultimately, one of the best things that came out of that was so we sold um, early 16 and then late summer, it was like mid 16. And then the following year, I ended up having a kidney transplant. And so if I would have been going through all that uh, while running this business, it could have killed me.
Mm, that's insane. I mean, it's a good decision you made. I feel like for a lot of people, it's hard, especially when you exceed all your own expectations and there's just the thought of more and more. I mean, really taking the time to settle down must have been very hard as well.
Well, I would tell you the best advice. I mean, listen, I tell people like with real estate, or if you're building a big business, and let's say, most people who are before they get success, to get to a certain point, uh, they've got most of their eggs in one basket, right? And so, like for example, today the self-storage business is really struggling,
Is
right?
it really?
I think it'll be fine, but it's at a bad point because ultimately, um, the storage business is highly dependent upon, housing, right? People moving. And there's just no movement in the housing market right now. Like people are moving, interest rates, there's no construction. So it'd be more stressful to have have 85% of my assets in the storage business. I wouldn't be very happy about that right now.
So is self-storage more for like individuals and like families, or are there also small
Yeah.
businesses involved?
It's both. I mean, the business customers are the best, right? Like for example, I've got a unit with all of my files in it, right? Like 2 years ago, I should have cleaned that thing out. I haven't done it, right? So I'm spending $250 a month just because I haven't wanted to go to Redford, Michigan to go clean out my unit yet, right? So it's one of the properties we sold. So it's probably a period of time now where I can now get rid of everything and stop spending the money, but I just haven't done it,
Hmm.
right? So um, a lot of businesses were that way, right? And then you got a lot of guys like run their landscaping businesses or any kind of contracting business out there. They're great because they don't leave. Um, but no, it's a great business. Ordinarily, it's just tough right now. But what isn't? I mean, everything's tough right now.
Yeah, is there a reason why people are not moving as much these days? Because I mean, at least I see so many residential properties being built like more and more. Maybe because I'm just getting older, but I'm curious like what's happening across the country.
Yeah, I mean, here's the simple answer. So let's say you're 35 years old, you got a couple kids, you bought a house for $400,000. Okay. You put $100,000 down and you had an interest rate below 3%. Okay. So now your mortgage, is at 3%, maybe it's a couple $1,000s, right? So let's say you could sell that house today for 600, right? But your next move is you want to buy $1 million house. Okay. So now let's say you paid off the mortgage. So now maybe you could put down 4 or 500,000. Most people don't, but most people only want to put down 20%. But now your mortgage is going to be quadruple what it was because the amount of your mortgage is double and your interest rate is double.
I see.
Right? So your payment triples or quadruples. And so people are finding it very hard to make that work.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, everything else you're buying right now is more expensive.
Yeah.
Gas prices are more expensive. Everything you buy because it's shipped with gas motor vehicles are more expensive, right? Everything, your groceries or everything you're spending on right now is more expensive. So people are making the decision to stay put
Hmm.
unless they need to move for a location, moving for a job or um, they just can't stay in their home for a certain, or they've done really well and they can absorb it. But a lot of people just can't afford it.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. When the Great Recession hit, I was 2 years old, back in '08. And, I've only heard stories about it, but it's really interesting to me how different industries were impacted by it, just because I think everyone was impacted in unique ways. And it was nice to kind of hear, in the self-storage niche industry, like what was kind of going on. But I guess I'm curious. Like, I know it was a dark time, but if you could tell me more about like what the world was like back then, and kind of what you would compare it to for someone around my age.
It's a great question, and I don't even know if I can make that analogy or comparison. Like, so if you had a loan coming due, banks were, I mean, they were just trying to get rid of all the real estate in their books, right? We had properties that we took over. I mean, they couldn't even keep track. Like you had to hire, there's something called receivership or somebody who comes in and takes over, properties that are in trouble that people give back to banks, right? I mean, there wasn't even enough people to do those jobs. Like people were switching careers to get into workouts, right? Because that was everything, right? So if you were in a position, so I was very, very, very lucky, right? If I would have been 5, 6 years further advanced in my career, I probably would have had a lot more assets. I probably would have taken a lot more risk. I mean, the money was so cheap. Just give me an idea, like our loan, like right now, if I was to do a loan on any kind of deal, probably wouldn't take more leverage than called 65% loan to value. Okay. That would be the most leverage I would take, which means I'm putting in more cash. Most people, you can get far, far better returns, generally speaking, by putting in less cash. Okay. You leverage it from the bank. So banks are really doing 60, 65% right now. We got a loan on our 8 properties, back in 2006 at 92% leverage. So we bought $18 million or $20 million of the properties, whatever it was, and we only put down 8% equity. And the rest was all leverage. So it's a lot easier at that point, especially because we didn't have any guarantees at the time. It's a hell of a lot easier. So let's say, so call it 10% for math. So say we had $2 million total in there. The bank wanted us to write a $3 million additional check at a time where we had no idea, what was going to happen. Right. So we would have, the way smarter decision would have been to tell the key, the bank, here are the keys. We're just going to walk rather than put more good money after bad.
Mm.
Right. Here's something crazy. So if you think about it for a second, so, being in Detroit, right, my wife being a Ford employee, she was in an apartment with just two other people. So at the time, I remember Christmas of '08, we're at her holiday dinner, and GM and Chrysler had just filed for bankruptcy, right? So everybody who had a pension lost their pension, right? If the government didn't bail them out, there was no clear path for them. Like they could have just closed a couple of the big three. And Ford, their stock was $1.
Wow.
Okay. And so the guys I was with are like, they bought thousands of shares. Okay. And I looked at my wife, I was like, God, I wish we had money. We just didn't have any money. Everything I had was going back in the business. And I said, okay, I could buy thousands of shares, but like I don't want to absorb, it could be tomorrow Ford could literally could file for bankruptcy. Now they didn't, and these guys end up making, 20 something X on their money. And like if that happened today, like I would, you know, probably say, okay, let's buy 50,000 shares, right? So I would take that flyer. Uh, that'd be pretty fun to make 20X on that, right? So, but at the time I just didn't have any money. But
Mm.
it was sheer devastation. Like I didn't know what I was going to be able to, what bills we were going to be able to pay for the business. Like thankfully we still did a good job managing and we figured it out. But and we took it like so. For example, we actually did a pivotal moment for us in 2010. There was a private equity firm that we had met and talked to about maybe funding us, and they had a portfolio of assets in Memphis, Tennessee, and it was like 15 properties. And the last thing I really want to do was third party management. But as it turns out, it paid us some really nice fees. And what that allowed me to do back in 2010 was hire a CFO he's a partner of mine now and really changed our business and my life. I mean, he's everything I'm not. Like he's a detail very detail-oriented guy who just, dives into all the numbers and can look at things in a way I can't even begin to imagine. He's an MBA, finance MBA, really talented guy, and we were able to hire him because we could afford it. Um, and we hired him on, he was the guy who came from, at the time it was GMAC, which is now Ally. And he got let go because of the recession. And he took a big pay cut to come with us on on a whim to get equity, which he made a very good decision. He bet on himself too.
Yeah. I mean, thank God your risk you took paid off and you're able to crawl out. But what was going on with some of your other friends at the time and their another maybe other business partners? Like, were they able to also take risk and crawl out, or friends in other industries? Like, what was kind of the other general landscape?
Yeah, at that age, I still had a lot of people that had jobs, friends that had jobs, right? Lawyers, accountants, things like that. So they were okay. Um, but my best friend to this day is, he had a retail business, and that was a very scary time for him. And he was able to, successfully get his way out of that and have a good exit after. Um, yeah, but it was all over the place. I mean, I had good friends who were in real estate that lost a lot of their assets, and were not able to do additional deals ever again. Um, yeah, I mean, there was plenty of guys that I saw. I mean, there was guys who we were very good friends with in the storage industry who had 400 assets, and their stories are ultimately a huge success story. But at that point in time, and they lost hundreds of properties. We bought a bunch of them.
Mm,
So, but they were smart enough and savvy enough to pull themselves out of it. But
that's good. Yeah.
it was dark. I mean, it was. Uh, I mean, at that time I had built a business, a website. It was called X Site Validation, and it was with the real estate technology I was telling you about. And uh, our premise was you could pull a report. We raised $1 million, and you could pull a report, and within 30 seconds, it'd be a 100-page report, and it would be based on what industry you wanted to investigate. So you could take any piece of land anywhere in the country and say, I want to put a storage property here. How will it work? It would pull all the demographics, it would pull all the traffic counts, it would pull all the competing sites, it would pull their rates. Um, and it was ultimately a it was an incredible product. And so we invested $1 million. So we had Huntington Bank, we had negotiated a contract. They were going to pay us $1 million a year for unlimited access to the site. Right. So here we are. We spent $1 million. We have one contract each year is going to pay us $1 million. Right. That's a pretty good start. Right. And my partner was on his way to Columbus, Ohio to get the contract signed and have a dinner with the guy to celebrate. And he calls him and he says, turn around. Uh, we just got hit with a $400 million judgment for our acquisition of Sky Bank, which was all subprime debt. And we are, in turmoil and can't sign anything. And from there on, everything just went in this
What
business
year
that
was that again?
was called Excite Validation.
What year was that again?
Oh, that was 2008.
Okay, that was 08 as well.
And they terminated it, and then the business obviously ultimately just shut down.
Oh man.
But it could have been a huge, huge success if we would have had it done
Yeah.
a year earlier. Who
Sometimes.
knows? At that time, everybody would have canceled contracts too. But for the crash, it was an incredible idea, incredible product, and had a proprietary scoring model based on industry type and location, and it was a great concept, and it just didn't make it.
Yeah. Sometimes the
And then
market.
from that point on, it was crazy. So then from there, as things started, you know, progressively getting better, and then you get all the way to, up until a few years ago where the economy was just on fire. I mean, after we sold the storage stuff, we returned, you know, I don't even know how much total capital got returned, but I mean, it had to be over $1 billion. And by that point, investors kept calling me and saying, where should we put the money? And I was looking at things to diversify. And so I was partnering with guys in other industries, apartments, uh, uh, student housing. We did a RV roll up, and then we also did we started a it's called a sale leaseback where we bought 40 something cannabis dispensaries, just the real estate around the country because they couldn't get real financing, and we're about to exit that as well. And things started going great. Things were selling and performing and cash flowing, and then so I went, other than that excite validation, which I knew was a big risk from the time. And, no one really invested more than, I think some people invested 50, but most people were 10 to 25,000, right? It was a total flyer. But on all these real estate things, I mean, I did 150 deals and never lost a penny for an investor. They all made money. And then starting about a year and a half ago, I got a couple of apartment deals that have gone back to banks, and a couple of these RV deals have tended to struggle a little bit. So it's hard. And I just realized emotionally, uh, it was great making people money, but it was way, way worse seeing people lose money. And so I'm not really interested in really participating in that anymore unless I have total control of the assets, right? So it's just not for me anymore.
When you look back at like all the success you've built, and when you think back to when you're in the trailer, when you just quit your job as a lawyer, I'm sure early then like you had kind of pictures of kind of what the path you want to go down, and as you started getting the storage industry business, you started working more in like entrepreneurial kind of spirit. Early on, did you have the conviction somewhere that like you would be really successful, or were you kind of just going with the flow of things and it kind of caught you by surprise, or where did that kind of internal conviction start to come from?
So it's a great question. So uh, I would tell you, I always believed in myself. I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. Like I knew it. Um, I never ever thought I didn't have like listen. I think I am the beneficiary of good. I'd say like the first thing I would say is I never think I'm the smartest guy in the room because I'm not. Right. Um, I think that to me, um, I always thought I'd live a good, successful life and be able to get the things I want. I grew up in my dad was a doctor, so I remember being young and we really were very I didn't know any different, but looking back, I mean, very basic. And my dad started doing better as he went into private practice, and we moved in a nicer house as I got older, and I never wanted for anything, but uh, I kind of figured that would be my life, right? Like I'd be able to go and travel and hopefully have a nice condo somewhere warm in the winter eventually, and right, like, and that was kind of my vision. And I kind of way out kicked my coverage. And I never envisioned this. But I think it never would have happened but for the recession happening and me having just sold the assets right before that, right? I don't think any of this would have happened, right? Or had I not left working with those guys, I think, I would have kept, I don't know that I would have stayed in storage. I think I would have kept going on the development stuff. So the biggest thing, like I saw the people get, I mean, the builders and the developers on residential development were the guys that got crushed. I mean, there was guys in town with hundreds of millions of dollars that lost it all, right? Like it was just over, right? So the music just stopped. It wasn't anything they did wrong. Um, but you can't be in that business without signing personal guarantees. Like they don't give you the money unless you stand behind it. So I, I think just the way, the universe worked, I got lucky. And so, and I picked, and I would say, our son just graduated college and he's starting a job on Monday out in California. And
Where did you go to
um,
college?
he went to Colorado. He
Awesome.
was in business school there. And so, as we're kind of giving him advice over dinner, as on Saturday night, we left on Sunday, and my wife just said, I just want you to remember, like, a lot of his success came from he was never greedy, right? And he would always try to find he'd give up a good chunk of the upside to bring in the right partners who could help the business be successful, right? So, um, to me, it's all about relationships, right? Everything's about relationships. And so, I've sold a couple businesses where I would tell you almost everybody would say like, wow, you didn't get enough like compared to your partners. And I never look at it that way ever. Like we had this credit card business that we built. Um, I would have said I was probably responsible for, you know, a very large percentage of the reason we were successful. And one of our partners got a lot more than I did. But I don't think anything would have happened but for him being there, right? Like my initial goal was to make $2,000 a month on credit card processing for the SBOA. And the last month before we were sold it, the SBOA was making 70,000 a month, right?
Awesome.
So, and we did that for many years. So ultimately, my point is, uh, you know, be a good partner, be a good person. To me, like I think I was able to get to that point because, they always said about me at the law firm was that I would run through a brick wall to get something done for everybody, and so people knew that, and so they could trust me, right? Like I was definitely not a very good draftsman of documents, but like you needed something to get done, you knew to ask me, right? Because I'd figure it out, right? And I would stay as late and work as hard as I had to. Um, and so ultimately, I think that kind of attitude endears yourself to people and they trust you and like you more. People want to work with people they like and trust. And so I don't think I could have ever had investors um, who would have trusted me had they not known me by working with me or having a relationship with me and knowing that they could trust me.
Mm.
So I
How
think
did,
that's one of the most important things.
yeah, that's awesome. How did you go about building these relationships and also finding good partners? Because, I've had the privilege of going to a great school in Michigan, and, I meet so many great people, but often when I'm looking for people to partner with or work on projects with, it's always somewhere inside of me is like, can I look for someone better, or is this, am I settling? Or, I feel like finding, first of all, defining the right traits is hard itself, which I'm sure you have so much more knowledge about now that you work with so many people. But I guess, first of all, what do you look for in people you work with and partners? And also, how have you mastered the skill of just building good relationships in general? Because,
I haven't mastered it. And I will tell you, I've made a handful of mistakes along the way, nothing major. One in particular recently, I gave away way too much interest to without knowing the person as well as I should have, and not kind of putting stipulations for them earning the share that they got. But I've never had to do that before. So I would say a lot of it is, years of knowing these people already and knowing their level of expertise. So it's a little harder at your age, right? I think, and I also, as I look back, some of the people I knew in college who were complete, you know, it's different. I mean, probably with what you're studying, but like a lot of people I knew and certainly weren't mature enough, certainly are very different today than they were. I think a lot, and I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I hated that guy in high school." I'm like, "Well, that's seriously like your brain's not even formed in high school, right? Like people are idiots in high school and mostly college." So I think people are much more mature now, and I think you guys have. There's a lot of advantages, but I think there's a lot of disadvantages too. Like I was ignorant to what was happening around me because I didn't have the internet, right? I didn't have LinkedIn. I didn't have social media seeing, oh my God, this person got this job or this person's doing this or they went there or they didn't invite me to this, right? I think that's psychologically very damaging. Um, so I'm fortunate to be at a point where I don't care about what other people do or have anymore. But even just like the small thing of like being left out, like everybody went somewhere and you weren't invited, right? That sucks, right? So I just didn't know, right? So because I was posting, hey, we were here together, all of us. Um, but I think getting back to your original question, I think you got to have you either got to know uh, their I guess history or their abilities, like you have some sense of that as far as partnering them in business, or you've known them personally for a while, or they come highly recommended, uh, and then just kind of going through the dating process a bit, right? So I'm like I love people, right? To me, I think I'm the guy who can strike up a conversation. I love hearing people's stories, right? So To me, it just I'm generally a really good sense of I have a great judgment of people and their character, and so that's kind of worked to my advantage, I guess. And I'm very trusting, and I like to think, and I think almost anybody who almost every person I've worked with will tell you I'm a really good partner. Like doing what you say you're going to do is one of the most important skills in life. Like you say you're going to get something to somebody by Tuesday, get it to them by Monday. Or if you think you're going to be late, call them over the weekend or the Friday before and say, listen, here's what's going on. This is way more difficult than I thought. Or someone else is not getting back to me. I've called and emailed a million times and texted them. I can't get to them. So I just won't have an answer for you. But I want to let you know. The worst thing you can do with anybody really is keep telling them you're going to do something. My wife's doing something right now, something at work. Like someone at work has told her now for 2 weeks she was going to call somebody and hasn't called. And this person keeps calling her saying, when's this guy going to call me? And like, it's a very difficult situation, right? So you don't want to be the guy that or woman who lets people down all the time. No one's going to trust you.
Mm,
Right. Like you got a person you're trying to figure out if you want to do a project with at school, and this person doesn't show up for class a lot, or that they aren't putting a lot of effort in, or you hear from other people that, hey, like this group project, this guy didn't do shit, right? So you don't want to have anybody saying those things about you.
mm. Yeah, that's great advice. These
And
days,
I would tell you too, like I actually think as I look back, um, some of the great people who helped me along the way. I didn't realize it at the time, but some of my best friends' fathers were pretty influential in town and great guys. Um, I clearly was nice and respectful and engaging with them along the way because uh, they really stepped up and helped me. And so, like, my point is, like, even with your parents' friends, like, I think it's a great thing, or people that you know around town or whatever, to say, you're home for the summer, to say, hey, I'd love to hear what you do. Can I buy you lunch or can I come have coffee with you? I just want to hear about what your business is. You'd be shocked at what that does. Like, I think it's like a really great skill or something that where when the time comes, like they'll somehow become invested in your career and your success, right? Like because they hear that you're interested and someone may say, oh, I could use an intern this summer. Oh my God, I was just talking to this great kid. You should call him, right? So um, I, that's happened to me a million times, right? So, like for example, I'm helping out these kids. So I run a program at the athletic department, and I'm actually going to Chicago on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so what we do is it's at the Michigan Athletic Career Center, and my one of my best friends in the world, who I went to college with, he's a brother of mine, and he's literally like a brother, and he and I we fund this program, and we bring people up to probably twice a semester. I'll bring 10 people up with me, business people, and we'll sit with the athletes and we'll give them just career advice. And then all these kids stay and they connect and they get all everyone's contact information and they follow up. And as they're looking for jobs and they want career advice, they call. I'm probably talking with 25, 30 different athletes, I've got in my kind of stable that I'm kind of helping and talking to occasionally or introducing them to other people. And so, and then we take them on a trip in June every year, and we take them to like 10 different companies. They go to Chicago for a week. So I'm going this week to for the trip. So to me, those kids, when they call me and they just ask for advice, like ultimately, of course, I want to say, okay, I'm going to introduce you to a handful of people, right? So uh, it's that kind of stuff pays more dividends than people think about.
mm, that's a great trait that you have, and I feel like I naturally do also enjoy like just hearing people's stories, and I think kind of what drives this podcast. But I think I'm realizing now that I kind of naturally do it, but if I put a little bit more effort into actually trying to build a connection or go out of the way more than I just do by natural, like there's probably so many people around me I'm not like talking to or just hearing from, and
Let me
especially
tell you something.
start
Let me,
growing.
let me give you some props for a second. The fact that you got to Robert, who then thought enough of you to to email me, and you're talking to all of us, right? People like us is incredible, right? That shows me that you got real talent, real skill, personality skills, and you're able like I mean, I assume when you were emailing me, I didn't really look at your email. I mean, I just assumed you were an established business guy. Like that's what I just assumed you were doing a podcast. Like, so the fact that well, you're going to be a sophomore now,
Junior,
junior, okay. The fact that you're what, 20,
19.
19, okay, and you're doing all this at this age shows great maturity and ability to talk to people. Like the fact that you and I are having this kind of conversation and you're asking these questions now is tremendous. I think um, humility and understanding at this age that like I would have the mindset to me, I think the people your age who have the mindset, listen, I just want to learn. I want to be a sponge. I want to talk to people but like you can certainly be smarter than people, right? Like you may be smarter, you probably smarter than me, right? Naturally smarter than me, but you don't what you don't have is experience, right? You don't have wisdom. You don't have, like you I could sit, but back in the day, I'm sure that I was ultra concerned that I didn't have a path, right? You may be feeling that way. I think a lot of people in your situation feel that way. Like, I should know what I want to do and I should be able to get all these internships and this, and none of it matters. It matters in the sense that it's all of it builds on each other, right? It all matters. But ultimately, like, I didn't even know what self-storage was. Like, I'm a founding member of a bank, right? I started an insurance company. I started a credit card company. I bought a bunch of cannabis buildings. Like, I don't know anything. I didn't know the first thing about any of it when I started, right? And I was a political science major and I have a law degree, right? To me, it's just getting out there and learning what's out there and seeing opportunities and then finding the right people. And so the best advice I give to anybody in your situation, there's a good chance whatever you're going to be doing 10 years from now doesn't even exist today, right? In fact, it's likely, okay, the way the technology is moving. So all that matters is becoming a better person, learning as much as you can, and going places to the extent you can, and it's practical. Like listen, I know it's impossible to find jobs right now. People got to take what they can get. So, but just when you, whatever you decide to do, just be the best at it, right? View every single person that you work for and work with as somebody who could be a future business partner, a future person that could recommend you somewhere or nominate you or sell something to you or for you, like bring you partners. Just everybody should that you come across should just think highly of you, love you, and respect you, right? To me, that will be the most important. And anything you learn may not be directly applicable. Like if you want to be in a coder or, computer science engineer, um, a lot of that's, I mean, when I hear a guy like John Oberheide, who invented Duo, say that coding is a thing of the past, I think that is a mind-numbing statement, right? So, um, I think just because industries change, you get experience, you meet people, you learn, and just seeing how to deal with certain situations. Like I would tell you, so when I left the law firm and I went to work for these guys, like I learned more in those 6 years than I could possibly imagine. Like there were some things I actually, and I tell them too, like there's certain things I learned that I didn't want to be or do, right? And it wasn't a knock on them. It just didn't work for me, right? And these guys, and the thing, and the reason that I love these guys and what they taught me, and it was two brothers, and one of them in particular, one of the brothers is one of my best friends in the world to this day. The other one I'm on good terms with, but the other one I'm just super close with. And the reason I went there, even though it was paving and trucking, I got the pleasure or the experience of working with them ahead of time. I just saw two guys who were in high school, basically in college. One was high school, one was college, or maybe one was high school, one was middle school still. They just were so entrepreneurial. They wanted to be successful, and they started striping parking lots. And then they figured out that there was more margin in paving, and so they went into they didn't know the first thing about paving. They were running a paving company out of their parents' garage, right? And created a business that sold for a lot of money.
Wow.
They were doing a couple $100 million a year of work, and it just started from two guys with sheer grit and determination. And I just knew I could learn a ton from these guys, right? And I knew I could. see what it took to run a business and motivate people. And so what I did when I went there, um, was I wanted to really learn everything about their business. And so I literally went out from, I mean, a month earlier, I was a freaking real estate lawyer, right? And I took a pay cut. Okay. But I was able to get equity and I invested in myself. Okay. But I literally went out and I worked on a paving crew for 3 weeks. I drove with a trucker for a week. I went with an engineer for a week. And I remember the brother who I'm still really close with kept challenging me. Like he would have me meet him at 5 in the morning for interviews. Okay. And wanted to test me to see how much I wanted it. And he kept saying, why you want to do this? Like, you're just some pretty boy lawyer. Like, why you want to do this? Like, and it's a dirty business. And I said, I believe in what you're doing. I believe in you guys. And I didn't tell him. And I worked with the other brother where I went on the paving crew and Dan shows up in his pickup truck after calling me pretty boy only for the first, month or so I was there, 2 months, and pulled up. He sees me and I see this smile. Never, I earned his respect for life right there. Like, never called me that again. And he realized and recognized that I was really all in, and he appreciated it. So I think it's a small lesson, but I think it just shows like how he completely changed his opinion of me based on what I was willing to do.
Mm. I feel like these days, like in the position I'm in, the biggest like question in my mind, and probably people my age's mind, is like, am I using my time as best as I can, or like what I'm spending my time doing, is it the most
Yeah.
efficient? And you know, I'm going down more like a computer science tech path, but in spirit, doing a lot of things similar to you in terms of entrepreneurship and building. And this is I want to work for startups or build my own startup. And you know, I think there's a lot of overlap between, even though like mine is completely tech, there's obviously it's all entrepreneurship at the end of the day, and it's all grit and relationship building and taking risk at the end of the day. And um, I'm working for a startup right now in an internship, and I'm also working on my own. And um, I think I have a lot of doubt sometimes. Is like, am I doing the right thing in terms of like what industry I chose? But then I also, in terms of what I'm building, but I also don't want to keep switching. And I know I'm so young, and I feel like I might have chosen this arbitrarily. But I mean, I guess at a bigger scale, beyond like the specifics, what do you think is the best way for people my age to spend their time for the kind of path I want to go down? Like, how can I learn the most right now and
Yeah.
really?
Listen, I, I don't know that I'm the best equipped to answer that question, right? Because, I am a total still, I guess, rookie with, AI and how to use it. I'm working on that now. And I actually hired a kid your age to teach me once a week to how to maximize AI. So I got to start doing it, even though I'm kind of, on the back nine of my career, I'm literally, I mean, I'm the guy that golfs 5 days a week now. I try to work maybe 20 hours. I try to stay engaged, but my goal for the rest of my life really is to be in a situation. Like, trust me, it's not lost to me that age 46, I was able to do this, right? Like, I am as lucky a person as it gets, right? I've been through horrible health things, so I want to, you know, it's been a challenge for me, and I'm doing great now. So I want to be able to enjoy as much as I can. So, um, that to me is like kind of the most important. But I don't want to do nothing because I feel like that will be a bad thing for me long term. And I like it. I like doing this kind of stuff. Like this kind of stuff I like doing more than the work. But I like staying engaged. I do a lot of philanthropy. But listen, I think the best thing, like, you got, it's hard for you guys. Like what I was talking about earlier, like everybody sees what everybody's doing. Oh my gosh, she's got a startup. I'm not doing shit. Like, I'm a loser. I'm behind. But I think the biggest thing is don't get out of your head, right? Like, don't worry as much as you guys all worry. Like, let's say so I'm assuming you go to Michigan and your parent, assume that, your parents are supportive and you could live at home for a year or two if you need to because you're not making money. as a startup or you're working a part-time job to pay to fund your startup, like even if you do a startup and it loses, right? It doesn't make it. You still spent a couple of very valuable years or a year, whatever it is, learning, right? And then you have options, right? You're going to have an amazing degree from the University of Michigan. You're going to be employable. There's going to be people that are going to want you. Um, I just wouldn't drive yourself too crazy,
Mm.
right? Like just keep getting experience,
That's
right?
a good reframe. Yeah.
Right? Like just go where somebody is going to teach you something. Like, to me, if you can make it in a startup and you think you got a chance to do it, I would never tell you that. I would never say don't do that, right? But for me, I got very lucky. It's funny. I don't regret. I don't live with any regret. I think law school ultimately ended up being a great thing for me. That's not to say I wouldn't have got to the same place, but who knows? And I don't live with regret, right? So I met a lot of the people who ultimately became my investors and my partners by being a lawyer, right? And you can argue that people look at you differently when you have a law. They assume something better about you, or they see a better experience because you were a lawyer, right? So that may or may not be true, but I'm sure there's some of that, right? Um, but it would have been better if I spent 3 years in law school and 5 years being a lawyer. If I would have spent those 8 years starting a business, would I have been better? Maybe, right? But I'll never know. So what's the point of asking that question? So to me, I think going somewhere where someone's going to teach you is incredible. And for me to be like the best thing that ever happened to me working with those guys, the Israel brothers at the paving company, was I was able to get a salary. Granted, it was a decreased salary, but I had a salary. They gave me, a percentage of the deals that we did together and then loaned me additional money to buy more equity. And then I could put in more of my own cash if I wanted to. And so here I am in a situation where I'm not getting nothing. I'm getting some interest in deals that ultimately paid off a very significant dividend. And I wasn't going out of pocket, right, to lose money by not getting a salary. So it was an incredibly fortunate situation. There's not a lot of those out there, right? So it's not lost on me that that was an incredibly fortunate situation, right? I was able to become an entrepreneur while still getting paid. That doesn't happen a lot, right? You don't step in a lot of businesses that cash flow day one. I mean, you could buy one, I guess. But I, I I think going to work somewhere where you can learn like my son, for example, has got a job working at a self-storage company where he's working he's working it's publicly traded and he's working with the CFO and the head of finance, and he'll likely be doing a lot of cash flow projections and working on pro formas and presenting financial statements to banks. If he is serious about doing real estate, that will be some of the best experience he'll ever get, right? It'll be better than getting an MBA, right? He'll be in the thick of it. It'll be hard. It'll be a lot of hours. It'll be all those things, but it'll be an incredible experience. And maybe somewhere he likes and stays for the rest of his career. You never know. But he's going to be somewhere that he's going to get great training. And to me, uh, that is incredibly valuable if you can find a position like that.
I think you're
And,
right.
and I would say, like a guy like you too, like now you could reach out for advice to a guy like me or Robert or other people you're talking to. Like it's hugely valuable, right? And for me, like I became a part of this organization, this peer-to-peer group that I've been involved with now for 8 years, and like through that, like I feel like I can get through to anybody, right? And so, uh, when I need something or I got to help somebody find a job, like I'm able to connect with some of the best and brightest in the world. And like that is incredibly valuable.
No, I think you're right. And I feel like I've also just noticed personally that there's something really special about just being around people you admire.
Yeah.
Because I feel like whenever I have been around people I admire, I've like molded to be more like them over time. And I feel like a lot of my growth has come from just being around people who I look up to. So, um,
I agree. And so I also early in my career, I joined this thing called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. It used to be called YEO when I was in it, Young Entrepreneurs. Um, and I joined when I was 30, 31 maybe. And it was really, maybe it was a little bit older actually, but whatever it was, really valuable. Like I think peer-to-peer groups are great, uh, especially ones where you can, feel comfortable, sharing very confidential information because, if you decide to become an entrepreneur, like I would tell you, like EO is a great place to be because uh, very few people, number one, there's a lot of things you don't want to talk to friends or family about, right? Number two, they don't quite understand it unless they're in your situation, right? Nobody appreciates the fact, like what it's like that, when you're running the business, if you don't collect the money or bill the money, you don't get paid, right? And you still got to pay your staff, and you got to take out loans, and and people can't appreciate that. So when you have people around you who do, it's very valuable to get that advice.
awesome. I'll check it out. Yeah, or something similar. Yeah, but thank you, and this is great. I mean,
Yeah.
your story is so cool, and there's so much to learn from a guy like you. So I really admire, respect your time. Do we miss anything? Anything you want to close on before we?
No, just keep doing what you're doing and keep meeting people and uncovering relationships and ideas and don't put too much, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to be in a certain place by a certain time and just keep getting the best experience you can and connecting with people and learning and I feel like if you're a good person, things work out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ian.
All right.
This will be out next Sunday, so a week from now. But I'll
Great.
send it to you as soon as it's ready, and
Awesome.
yeah, I'll hopefully like it. And if you know anybody who you think would be down for something like this, I'd love to talk to anyone with a cool story.
Yeah,
So
I got some people I'll send your way.
awesome. Thank you,
All
Ian.
right. All
Yeah.
right, man. Good to meet you.